Okay, it's Kenneth Charles Sauer, and I was born in 1932, southeast of Fox Valley, Saskatchewan. Well, let me just tell you this. First of all, we didn't get a teacher it was a one-room school. We didn't get a teacher till February. So this meant that I was not in grade one until February of 1939. So what happened here, the first day of school, I refused to go. And just look at what happened. Now, my dad chased me around the field as our neighbors tried to pick me up. And I said, I'm not going. And so he said, okay, fine, I'm going to put you at the neighbor's place. But then next day I went to school and I finished my grade one by the end of June. And no kidding, it was a one-room school, grade 1 to 7, and everything happened there. The one teacher that came out there was just out of grade 12 by 2 months, and he became our teacher. So he became a kind of a teenager teacher. Well, I tell you what, it's rather interesting growing up on a farm. There were five of us, three other brothers and a sister, the youngest one. And so my oldest brother was 2 years older than I am, and he got polio when he was 8, which meant that he had to go to down to Capel to be in an iron lung and things like that. And then the one was below him, he was 2 years younger than me, and then 4. So what happened here, I ended up being my dad's helper and my mom's helper. So there I was, milking cows at 12 years of age type of thing, or 11 years of age. Or I was handling something else over here because my dad did some help. And I became a really go-to person. I would clean the barn and then put out new straw for the cattle and the horses type of thing. I ended up with my dad as soon as March came along. By the way, he was cleaning his wheat and putting the sacks, and I was turning the wheel. And it's the kind of a thing that mom would get ill type of thing, so I would do the cooking. I would milk, and then I would take and bring it to the house. And what would happen there, I would separate in a cream separator, separate the milk from the cream, stir it, wash everything perfectly along the way, and know that sooner or later we could sell the cream, put the cream out at the gate, and then picked up and make a little money on the side, and at the same time make our own butter and so on. Well, what my dad always believed in having a garden. Well, yeah, that's nice to have. A garden probably a quarter mile long and about an eighth of a mile wide. But guess who did the weeding? Well, but we had a lot of excitement there, type of thing. And you had a softball field, and people rode horses or drove buggies to school. And then yours truly walked. He walked with his brothers about 2.5 miles each way, type of thing. And in the wintertime, we were allowed to use a little cutter with a single horse. And then in grade 8, our family, my father said, I love farming, but I have 5 of you kids, and I want you to get an education. So we're going to move into town. And we moved into town, and lo and behold, grade 8 to 12, here there's all kinds of people, but grade 7 and 8, one class, grade 9 and 10, grade 11 and 12, and I thought this was fantastic. And that's where I started trying to make a difference. I found out when you went into town, people were likely to live alone, type of thing, or act alone. And so as we grew 14, 15, and 16, and 17, I had 3 good friends, and we decided that we're going to do this, and we're going to volunteer to do this. Volunteer to put up a skating rink, volunteer to help shingle the curling rink, and just to volunteer right across the city. There I was, a long distance runner and a javelin thrower. I knew nothing about javelin throwing, but I learned a little bit about it. And I won both the 800 and the javelin. So I thought I should maybe sometime in the future maybe work toward that. Never happened, but I'll come back to that. So it's a kind of a situation. When I graduated, what can I do next? Well, number one, I'd like to be a doctor, a medical doctor. But then you see, we live on a farm, and the crops are not that good every year, and so we didn't have the money for the tuition. And secondly, I don't like blood. And so I decided that what I would do is I would become a teacher because I used to teach my little brothers. I'm grade one, of course, you see, so I knew they weren't even in school yet. So I just decided that I would teach them the basics of mathematics and things like that. So why not go on? So in 50-51, I went to Teachers College in Moose Jaw, got out of Moose Jaw, and and what happened, of course, was the fact that I ended up my first 2 years in the one-room school as a teacher. Well, what happens, of course, is because teaching has changed so much, but you go right back to that time, there was they did the basic things that you needed to do to add, to subtract, and to write, and to read, and to understand the world around them, type of thing. And it's a kind of a situation that the parents and kids trusted you and respected you, and you have to carry that on, by the way, in your life, because if you wanted to be a good teacher, you wanted that respect, but you wanted them to be fair, firm, and friendly in the operation, to understand that you're a leader, but only because you've taken extra education to become part of their life. And so, you can end up with no discipline whatsoever in a classroom, and people people still to this day, and this is 70 years later, I'm still having people who are students back in that one-room school and in the school at Eatonia where I taught grade 7 and 8, coming back and saying hello and keeping in touch. So I probably have about 5 or 6 of that category who have stuck with me in contact over all these years, and that's about 70 years, because they said I had an effect on them, a positive effect, and made their life a lot different because I was there. And because of that comment that they would make now and then, made me always feel good. But somehow or other, I didn't know I was influencing as much as I was, but I was, to my surprise, making quite an impact upon them. I came through all of that, and I think I learned a lot of how to be a helper. Because when something needed done, I'd say, "Well, I'll do it," and it becomes part of your nature that you want to be helpful, and no use complaining because nobody's listening anyway. And so there I was, and I tell you, one day, this is a remarkable kind of connection again. Uh, my younger brother and I, he would be 10 and I'd be 12. We would take throwing hay from the hay rack up into the loft of the barn. And when you get nice fresh hay for the horses and cows later on, there's a nice smell to it. So we lay back. And I said, as we lay there, I'd like to be a doctor someday. And so I don't know where I found the chalk, Kim. So I go, I'll find a piece of chalk, and I write up on the wall, Dr. Ken Sauer. And they say, "Well, what does that mean?" And so lo and behold, I end up with my doctorate. So I take Charlene out there, and I said, you may as well climb up that ladder. And sure enough, it's still there. That was 40 years later. And I don't know whether it's still there, but the connection, I have no idea why I did it. But it was the kind of a thing, if you lay there and it's smelling that beautiful hay around you, type of thing, that this idea came to me that I should just go up and put it on the wall. Helping my dad harvest, helping my dad with getting the cows in and riding a horse, and having a real black Arabian stallion type of thing, and I with no saddle, and I'd go out to get the cows in the field, and then come to the fence, and I was going to get off the horse to open the fence, and he decided to leap over. So he leaped over, and I hung on to his mane, and I landed with him. But it's a kind of an adventure like that I remember as clear as day. I can see the picture and everything else of me doing that and saying, "Wow, I made it! I made it to this side of the fence, or to the other side of the fence." And many little things along the way. There's little, what I call little minor accidents, but could have been dangerous. And I always came through. So I thought somebody's looking after me, and I always felt good about that. It's happened over the years too since then. Well, I'll tell you what, I was really a confirmed bachelor. because I was 33 when it first came upon me. I would go out with girls, we'd go to dances and stuff like that, and every once in a while got excited about it. But because I was coaching and volunteering again, so this brand new high school in Saskatoon, Walter Murray Collegiate, I come into the office one day, and here she is, one of the secretaries behind the desk. And as soon as I saw her, I said, just a minute, there's an electric bond between us. Then I found out, did a little investigation. I was coaching a juvenile hockey team that won a provincial championship, and her brother was on that team. And I knew her mother and dad because they were my parents, the parents of the hockey team. So I see her and I say, well, just a minute now, this is the one. And so that would be in September type of thing. By December, I'm taking her out for dates along the way. And in January, I decided that I would propose to her. So we were going to go out to this nice dining room in Saskatoon. And what happened, I was wearing contacts. And they're sitting at the table with our supper, and I'm crying. I'd cry, and then I cry because the contacts are loose and there's tears coming down. So I have to excuse myself and go to the bathroom. And I did that 3 different times. But she laughed about it, and I laughed about it. And then she said, I was going to, on this date, I was going to wear my nice shoes, and I just got my overshoes on. So we laughed about that. And from then on, we were married in April. And she had a little boy, 7, and a little girl, 4. Because her first husband was a firefighter and died of cancer. But so there she was a widow, but that was it. And I tell you, she just passed away 1 year ago, so we have 60 years together. And this means then that I matched my bachelorhood to this beautiful lady, and of course we were the hosts of more staff parties, teacher staff parties, than anyone else along the way, because she was a great hostess, and we had the house type of thing along the way. And as I say, the last 3 years was a very disappointment because her chronic weakness along the way and pain and falling from time to time was a stress on both of us. But it right to the very last day type of thing, I still loved her, still do. Well, I think the biggest one was both the Heights rink and the one at the Crescent Heights. What happened is, this goes back to Saskatoon, but the hockey rinks had just boards and a roof. And so what happened, when it blew snow, the snow came in. When it blew dust, it blew dust in. And of course, when the sun was hot, it melted. And Graham Kelly and I were both aldermen on public services, and we said, this is ridiculous. If you can only have facilities in this community that are good for 45 days or so, that's wrong. So we proposed closing them both in, 180,000 each, and now they're used 365 days a year. Well, I still think that's one of the greatest there. Number two, the other one that's really is a legacy that I'll always be proud of is the track. I got here, and because I've always been in track in Saskatoon and working with track in Lethbridge, but coming here, I see that the track is a clay track that's bumpy and not dangerous, but pretty close because people work on it. So I'm going to get out there, and I volunteered to get set up a system where we could raise funds to set up so yes, we did. We set it up, and we we raised over $1 million. It's $1 million track. It's got a beautiful surface type of thing. And when we look at Lethbridge, they were trying to build a track, and their track was over $2.5 million. And we say to ourselves, our track is such when it's sunshine outside, there's no glare, and when it rains, there's no problem because over there the starting blocks would move. And when they ran down the track with the glare and the sun was terrible. But you look at that track now, type of thing. It's one of the premier tracks in the province, and again, volunteering to do something like that makes me feel that 2,500, 3,000 kids go through that track every year, and adults too. And so that's another achievement. And then as you take a look around, I was on the Public School Education Foundation. I ran what I call telethons, and I also did the golf tournament. So you're mixing town and gown. So you again you want to involve people from the teaching, from the educators, and for the public. So town and gown, and so it ends up. We ran that for 21 years. Then we'd have a telethon where we'd have through the cable have that done where people could all the schools could participate, and they got a proportion of the money we had raised on the side, so they were able to get more gym equipment or more technology, computers and things, or more art things and stuff along the way. And so those achievements make me feel good today. Well, you know about it because I'm pretty well informed of a lot of the things. I knew about the Order of Canada, and when I got that call, it was kind of just a surprise, almost enough to knock you down and say, "Just a minute, you, Ken Sauer, are going to get the Order of Canada?" That's a very select group of people in Canada, and it did my heart good to know that, but at the same time, I was just a little bit hesitant about getting too excited because I didn't know what was involved in going down to Ottawa. So Valerie and my granddaughter Jennifer, we went to Ottawa, and I'll tell you what, there's a picture of me holding my arm around Michelle Jen, the Governor General, and the pomp and ceremony that we went through was a great delight. And Randy Bachman, by the way, got it at the same time, and so I got to know him, and it's rather interesting of the people that they brought together, what different walks of life. And by the way, there was no other educator there. And it was, but it was what a thrill and what an honor to have that. And it was they were just treated you well like royalty, and it, it's a kind of a situation that you don't want to boast about it, but at the same time, when I do my emails, they say you always do that, but CM at the back, the Order of Canada, and the Alberta of Excellence, and the CD. Well, not that much other degrees, but it's the kind of a thing that puts you into a group of celebrities that I'm not, and a group of people who are well known across the world. And I don't know because when I was on a city alderman, I became the president of the AMA, and as the president of the AMA, I traveled all across Canada, and they knew Medicine Hat, and they were envious of us, positive envious envy, and it's the kind of a thing that now you spread out like that, and the honor is still there. It's still there, and the certificate sits in my den. There is, as I say, is one of those selected to be honored in Canada, and to be the honor itself is worth its weight in gold in terms of just knowing that you're up there. Oh, this is, by the way, the biggest thing that has happened to me indirectly that I never would ever have thought about it. But we're having an evening meal, my wife and I I got a telephone call from Terry Riley, who's the chairman of the board. And he said, Dr. Sauer, I want to tell you that the board has just passed a motion to name the new elementary school after you. What? That's the first day. That's the first time on the telephone or anywhere I was caught for words. I didn't know what to say. So I finally told him. I said, I don't know what to say. And he said, well, congratulations. And then we went to the opening of it, where they dug the spade work type of thing. And my family were all there, and the board was there. And it's kind of a situation. Whoa, this is unheard of for Ken Sauer to have a school named after him. And then I watched it as it grew, and I would visit from time to time because now I felt a little bit of a touch of family, you see. So I would go there and watch it develop this and develop that, and talk to Graham and Graham Construction. about the things they were doing and stuff like that. And yeah, then I was there for the opening, and again the family with me, and all these people there. I knew most of the teachers and the principals, stuff like that. I get up on the stage and I'm cutting the ribbon for it. Wow, just, you know, this is named after me, but just a minute now, just a minute. This was named after me, but by the way, don't expect me now to be pushing me in here and trying to direct the traffic, which I can do, you see. And then, of course, what happened? From time to day, every opening of the school, they bring the students in, 300 of them, and they meet at the front of the school before they're allowed inside. And Ken Sauer gets a chance to bump fists, shake hands, and watch my knees because they grab my knees. So I say hello to all the kids as they go enter into the school. And then the first Friday of the school day a year, they have an assembly. And before my Bachelor of Degeneration, I used to read a book and talk about it. I keep, I keep emphasizing things like kindness and caring, and how safety of school is, and how to respect along the way. And as I finish, Jim, I say this. Now, can you be kind? I say, I'm going to ask this question. And if I say, can you be kind? I want you to say, yes, we can. So, can you be kind? Yes, we can. Can you be caring? Yes, we. And of course, the teachers and everybody's like, what the heck's he doing? I go by Dr. DKSS, the Dr. Ken Sauer School of Fine Arts program. And tell you what, that is the highest level of pride I have ever had. And again, thank you for them for doing that, because, as I say, I know that they were giving it because I did this and did this, and they led the school district in a fine fashion for 14 years. But that's what an honor. What an honor. So it's terrible for a person to get old and to retire. But I'll tell you what, this is one story. At my 80th birthday, my family put on a come and go tea at the hockey rink. And Doreen Irving, who used to work with us when I was on the city alderman, she wrote a poem of eight verses. And the last verse said that I should work to be 104. So 104 is my goal. But be that as it may, except for my mobility, and I can't walk as fast as I used to. And otherwise, I still do my physical fitness in the morning, and I go down to the gym Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So I try to stay reasonably fit. But I tell you what, I think that my mind is still as quick as it used to be. I still have a vision of things along the way. So I'm called upon to give advice along the way, and that becomes my mantra now, of course, is to be available to answer questions. And I helped and we ran all the summer games and the Canada games and everything else. And when I do, there's something else over here. When people ran for city council, they would come and ask questions, type of thing. And so it's the kind of a thing that you end up as an old guru who gives advice, whether it's good or not, but gives advice. About a year and a half ago, my ophthalmologist said, you have to get rid of your car because you're macular degeneration. I said, just a minute, doctor. I can see a bird 2 blocks down the street on a pole. He said, that doesn't matter. A car is right here. You have an accident. Well, that has changed my involvement. So now most of my involvement tends to be some committee work outside. The Track and Field Society, I'm emeritus, they call me emeritus board director there. And I'm still involved with the Special Olympics behind the scenes. But it's a little bit more relaxing, but not completely. And I just as soon see it that way, because my mantra still is eat well, sleep well, and exercise. So retirement is an ongoing, evolving system along the way till the day that they put me in an urn and say thank you. As John Diefenbaker, I met him on 3 different occasions, and you could see him and that's what we're missing, by the way, in politics nowadays, is to be tough, but at the same time, after you're finished debating, you go and have a beer together, type of thing. And John Diefenbaker was that kind of a person. It's just an ordinary person when you met with him. It's the kind of a thing. Alan Blakely. So I've had a pleasure of meeting about 12 or 15 of those kinds of people, the Ralph Clydes and Don Gettys and people like that too. But all of those people put me a little bit in awe of who they were, because at that when I met with them, they were much different politicians than we have today. And I'm sorry that as a social studies teacher that I have to say this, that we have no match of those people from the past. And that's rather interesting, isn't it? Medicine Hat is a very nice community. It has been over the years a community of pride and kind of what do you call a kind of a leadership in terms of having our own gas and stuff like that, and having a reasonable set of amenities along the way. But I want to encourage all of the people who ever see this that your job is to be part of it, not to sit back and let someone else do it. You get out there and get involved. And I use that word again, but the fact is that we all have a responsibility just to keep this community just kind of booming and blooming, and know that people want to come here because of you and what you do or others do. That you remember, we'd like to be remembered by. So I got the school district, I've got Kiwanis Club, and I have the City of Medicine Hat. And then this is the one that goes with it. And then, of course, this is the Order of Canada that actually came as a certificate, and I had it framed. And then here is the big one. And with the opening ceremonies, cutting the ribbon and stuff like that. So. And so the big thing was, Kim, it seemed that when we moved pretty quickly, because we moved on March the 8th. That would be 7 years ago now. And everybody tried to help. So we got in here on March the 8th, and on March the 10th, COVID set in. Mm-hmm. So half the stuff was there, but we know it was there, we had to dig around. But the photographs are mostly of where we were when we were kids, or family pictures along the way. And then,